Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee with Terence. In this channel and with this video, what my goal is to try to share with you some ideas, all with the goal of finishing it by the time I complete a cup of coffee. With some of these topics which I'm talking about, they are complex and it's difficult to make it short because complex topics tend to talk about everything at the same time because they're deep in nature. So today's topic is around the idea of breaking ceilings with momentum and specifically talking about job progressions. So it seems a bit cryptic. What I'm really talking about are these scenarios. So here's a scenario. My ideas don't get heard, so nobody takes my contributions very seriously. This is a fairly sort of typical scenario that I've heard. So here, another one that is common is I do a good job, I'm told so, but I don't get paid much more. Third scenario is others in the company are killing it and progressing. I'm not. It feels like they just don't like me. And the fourth scenario I want to sort of address as well at the same time is I'm told that I don't possess a certain skill. That's what's holding me back. So I work really hard to get it, but even after I do, there's just no progression. So this is all with the view of breaking a ceiling. In all those four scenarios, there seems to be an invisible ceiling that's holding you down. How do you create momentum? How do you use that momentum to break these ceilings in a job progression type scenario? So let's talk about ceilings really briefly. Ceilings are prevalent everywhere. So you're going to have ceilings whether you're employed, so in a job scenario, whether you're self-employed, whether you're in business, whether you're looking to grow a business, or whether you're trying to just sustain a business. And if you want to think about it, the ceiling is simply an opposing force, something that is suppressing your ability to progress, something that's just holding you down. That's why it feels like a ceiling. So the first thing I want to talk about with ceilings is you need to accept that it is fundamentally you. The onus is fundamentally on you. You're the person that has to break through the ceiling. And you can. If you don't own the fact that the ceiling belongs to you and that it is your ceiling and it is your duty to, or your job to break it, you're walking to a really difficult life. Your wins are yours. The prizes that you win are yours. So therefore, the ceilings that present themselves to you, they're up to you to break. No one's going to break them for you. And as you break the ceilings, they get progressively harder. So there are always ceilings and new ones come, and then you have to break that, and then a new one presents itself, and then you have to break that as well. At the beginning, your ceilings are really easy to beat, right? They're simpler and easier one. The first one would be in a job scenario is getting a job. And if you have a job right now, you've already broken a ceiling before. You were unemployed and then you became employed. You overcame this hurdle called perpetual unemployment. So it's the old conundrum, I can't get a job because everyone's looking for someone who's already skilled and has experience, and I don't have that. So that's a real ceiling that sits there. You've already broken past that ceiling. You have a job. You're simply trying to progress within that. And a new ceiling has been presented, and this ceiling feels harder. And when you break that ceiling, it's gonna get even harder. So you just need to be mindful. Ceilings get progressively harder. In all situations in beating ceilings, you're going to need leverage, some tool or weapon that's going to allow you to get through that ceiling. It's often said it's a glass ceiling because it's supposed to be imaginary, and breaking that glass ceiling just needs a bit of momentum, a bit of force, as in force is mass times acceleration. So there's two components in generating force. One is mass and the other is acceleration. An increase in speed, that is the acceleration you create. And typically things that are moving already has momentum. There's also another major component called mass. And mass also fabricates force. I want to talk about mass really quickly. Mass are things that you currently have, and you'll find that this is true for people who seem to be able to overcome bigger ceilings. If you have things like wealth and income, fame, you've got a great finance, you've got great profile, you've got great relationships, your knowledge and experience is stronger, and you have more available time, you're naturally going to be able to overcome larger ceilings. You're going to be able to break those hurdles down because you have a larger body of mass. Acceleration, on the other hand, this is something we can all sort of manufacture, if you will. The three crucial things that you can use to accelerate. One is belief. If you believe, or you start believing, or you manufacture belief, and you start inspiring yourself in an idea, you're naturally creating movement. Just try it for a moment. Like if you have an idea that you want to get behind, and as you repeat the idea and you poke at the idea and you get more inspired by your own idea, you start to believe in your idea. You start to do things differently. You speak louder. You speak more confidently. You take action that stems from that idea, which is why belief is the first component. Your action follows shortly thereafter. And using a combination of that and as well as the way you speak to people, you're going to be able to build influence. So these are the three levers you can start thinking about. In these scenarios, I kind of want to define the ceiling a little bit. So I'm going to go through the four examples, scenarios there. I want to define the ceilings there. I kind of want to examine what type of mass you might have. Like I didn't give a lot of context. I just put one statement in there, and everyone's situation is quite different. But I just want to loosely look at that and say, what are the potential mass that you might be able to leverage? And of course, where else can you get additional mass? So that being leverage. And do you or will you eventually have the tools to break that ceiling, and what that scenario might look like? And your options typically are in every ceiling is you get to maneuver or reposition yourself to change what that ceiling feels like and looks like so that you're able to break it. In an example with the job, a really common way, a really simple way to think about maneuvering around the ceiling is, well, quite simply, changing jobs, changing the company, changing the team you're at, changing the people you work with, change the actual job you actually do. Is there an option to actually maneuver and find a weak spot in the ceiling, if you will? Secondly, can you gain the mass? So is that if you're swinging a hammer against the ceiling, maybe you just need a bigger hammer, right? So can we gain a mass? And the third one is perhaps we just need to swing harder more often. And it's likely you'll end up using a combination of all three to get past this ceiling. So I do want to say here though, because I am sort of skirting around the topic of potentially like in a job situation, you might feel like this is really difficult, and it is always an option to say, let's get a different job somewhere else. Don't just quit your job. You have to learn to break ceilings. If you're practicing breaking little ceilings, you'll eventually be able to break really big ceilings, really tough ones. And they only get tougher, and you can't just keep skipping around forever, because sooner or later you're going to run into one which you can't get away from. So that's important. I don't want you to think about it as let's just quit jobs. Okay, so let's go through these scenarios. Scenario number one, my ideas don't get heard, so nobody takes my contributions seriously. As someone who's employed a lot of people, this seems to be a really common thing. Ideas not being taken seriously makes you feel like you're undervalued, makes you feel like it's the cause for why you're not progressing within the company. Let's call out the obvious. You might be in a highly toxic environment. That's always possible. So let's just shelve that for a moment though, because in any scenario I produce, you can always say, it's the place, I'm going to quit, and I'm going to go somewhere else, and it'll all be better. If it's not that, let's just pretend it's not that. It's not toxic environments. What could it be then? In this scenario, it's likely to be one of two things. It could be because you have shit ideas, or you have a shit delivery of your ideas. It's one of the two. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's almost always one of the two. Like you might have a makings of a loose idea that might actually be amazing. To produce a good idea, you need to be deeply connected to the problems and the challenges, and you need to have deep research and a deep understanding on how to overcome them. If you're finding that your ideas aren't being taken up like that, there's a really good chance you haven't understood the audience on what they're expecting to hear as a viable solution, as viable ideas, and you don't have a deep enough connection to the problem as yet. You might feel you do, but the fact that they're not being heard is a really good test that it is not. It might just mean a deeper connection to your company, to your team, and the problems, and spending more time really thinking about those problems and challenges. The idea might be fundamentally good, but your delivery isn't there. Some people are really good at calling out ideas on the spot. They tell it with such excitement that everyone gets on the spot and they go, "Ooh, wow, that's amazing. I follow that. I buy in. That's amazing." That person has honed the skill of telling a story, of delivering those ideas. They've mastered that skill. They've got a skill and they're leveraging that skill in telling that story. That's why they were able to do it. If your ideas, and you believe fundamentally your ideas are great, but it's the delivery that's letting you down, then that's a skill that you really need to develop. Unlocking that is going to get you to the next level, whatever the next level is. Some people are great at it naturally, and some people are great at it in context of the audience that they're telling the story to. So perhaps it's a bunch of people that they all get along really well with each other. They have a certain personality, and in that environment, the person who's able to tell a great story tells it a certain way and the group accepts it. That's not the fault of the audience. That's the fault of the storyteller. The storyteller needs to be able to look at the audience and take the story and turn it in a way that the audience gets it. And if you're not good at that, it might not be that you're really bad at delivering. It's just that you're really bad delivering to that group. Don't jump straight at the idea that it's the audience's fault and that they're not listening to you, or the ideas are great and they're just too dumb to follow it. Just try flip it for a moment. It might just be you. Now let's go back to the original scenario at which we talked about it. It's always possible that it's the environment you're in. Particularly if you're in a larger company and you're working with people who just work there, they might not give a shit as much. So in that scenario, absolutely it's possible that the environment's toxic and you can't get across. You need to be able to strike off though that it's not that the idea is shit, and that it's not that your delivery sucks. It is in fact the environment. I would go out on a limb and say it's actually pretty rare that it's the environment. I also want you to consider that if you switch one environment to another environment, you might just find yourself in exactly the same spot. Like it might be more you than you think. Next one. I do a great job or a good job. I'm told so. So your bosses tell you you're doing a good job, but I don't get paid much more. In this scenario, I'm going to quickly call out two things here. Let's evaluate that ceiling. For example, the ceiling you have in this scenario is that it's the same job, therefore you get the same pay. This is a tough one. This is a tough pill to swallow too, because if you clean for a living, there's nothing wrong with cleaning. I'm just using this as an example. I'm just saying if you clean for a living, there's a band at which you get paid. You get paid between here and here for the job of cleaning. If you're a really good cleaner, you might get paid more at this band. If you're a really bad cleaner, you get paid closer to this band, or maybe you don't get employed at all. So same job, same pay. It's also possible that the environment you're in, despite you doing a good job, the company you're in, the industry that you're in, might not value that job as much as a different industry or different company. For instance, going back to cleaning, perhaps if you're cleaning at an office, you might get a pay band between here and here. But let's say you were cleaning at a medical, a surgical department where a standard need to be held. And because you're so good at cleaning, you're one of the few people who can fill that void, then you might not be paid in this band. That place might value that job a lot higher, and thus they might pay more for it. So in this scenario, I'd like you to consider that there's a possibility that your role is undervalued. Now, if you're looking in the market right? So as a cleaner, and you cannot find a space in there which values highly skilled, highly diligent cleaners, there's a really good chance then that the whole job industry-wide is undervalued. So you need to kind of know, are you in an undervalued space by society, right? Or if it's just the company that's undervaluing it. So it's not necessarily you, it just might be an undervaluation. The third one, others in the company are killing it and progressing. I'm not. It feels like they just don't like me. Whew. This one happens. I hear this one a lot. It's difficult to overcome because it feels very much relationship based. It feels very much as if you're an outsider to the company, and that must be the cause, that must be this ceiling that's holding me down. If someone else is killing it in the company and you're not, look at the people who are killing it. There's something in the way they believe or operate or communicate or influence. There's something about that group. And don't jump to things like race and gender just like that, okay? So stay away from that for a moment. Just look at that space and think, why is it that group? What is it in their behavior? So let's look at behavior. Let's look at interests. Let's look at values. What is it that they seem to have in common that the company seems to promote? Looking at that said, can you adopt any of those? So perhaps they value people who are outspoken and able to make great presentations. Perhaps that's what's similar in that group. Then that might be something you could adopt. Perhaps, and I'm not suggesting that this is a good thing, I'm just suggesting that this is something that could be, they might value people who work really hard, and the group of people you're looking at are people who are able to throw in the extra 2 or 3 hours here, and they work on the weekend, so they might get called in. I'm not suggesting that that's necessarily something that businesses should be doing. I'm just looking at it very selfishly from your point of view. If you want to overcome that, if that is what it is, have a think about what you can adopt out of that behavior and bring it into the way you act. Look, it's your choice. You don't have to put in extra hours. You don't have to work late hours. You don't have to do all that sort of stuff. But if that's what's being promoted, you have the option. It is an option of yours to exercise that, to create a better positive alignment between your value set and what the company values. Of course, if all the things that they value is something that you're looking at and you think, that's not stuff I believe in, that's not stuff that I agree with, and I don't value those things, and I think that it's wrong that this company values these things, then you might just be in the wrong place, right? So you might need to find somewhere else that's got a value set that's a lot more like yours. In the theme of learning how to overcome ceilings, I'm just going to suggest, even if it's for a short while, learn how to overcome them by dealing with, can you take your value set and align them? Because it's really hard to take everyone else's values and align them to yours. It's easier to take yours and align it somewhere else. It's just a thought. Right. You may have, second point, you may have created negative baggage. So you may have created notoriety within your business. Maybe people look at you differently now. Because perhaps you had the drunk session at a Christmas party, that sort of stuff, right? Maybe you did something silly, and it's created a negative perception on you. If that exists, and it might very well do, that's something you're going to have to overcome, and likely by leaving, because sometimes these negative baggage might take a while before it overcomes, before you naturally overcome it. But it's actually not impossible to do so. All you need to do is do a whole bunch of positive things instead. So think about overcoming negative baggage with some positive behavior. A great idea there would be to look at the groups that within your business that are winning. So you're going to look at those groups of people who are successfully accomplishing things, and in almost In almost every situation, these groups are undertaking projects or they are undertaking special tasks. How can you sneak in with that and leverage the fact that you have weekends, leverage the fact that you have nights, leverage the fact that there might be something you can bring to the table that doesn't cost anyone anything, that allows you to join a winning group and ride some wins with them. That might put you in the group of people that are killing it, and then you would be viewed as people who are killing it and gives you an opportunity to be liked instead. I'm told that I don't possess a certain skill. I work hard to get it, but even after I do, there is no progression. Right. In this scenario here, there might just be financial pressure within your company. So there's what's the easy way to say this? That can happen because, well, basically it's a lie. There's no way I can afford to pay you more, so I'm going to tell you that you need to get skill A, B, C instead, and I'm just trying to avoid the fact that I can't pay you more. So you need to be savvy enough to sort of realize that's always a possibility, right? And this one's really tricky because you've now been misled down this road to think that once I get this, once I unlock this, I'm going to get here. And once I unlock this, I'm going to get here. That's a really common thing that you're going to find forever. So you kind of need to be able to do two things. You need to think, is there truly a demand for that skill? So don't just go run off and pick up a skill. Look in the marketplace. Is there truly demand for that skill? If there's demand for a skill, then it's worth you picking up that skill, whether in this environment or not is going to value you for it. Because if you pick up the skill and you get good at doing it and they don't value you for it, it's going to be valuable somewhere else. And if you do have the skill and you're told that there's no progression for it yet, the other thing to consider is that you haven't yet applied that skill. So grab whatever you've learned and get some projects going at the company you're at the business that you're at. You were told to look at it in the first place, so you should be able to put your hands up and say, I've now picked up something. I would really like to be either part of a group that's doing this, or I'd like to do something in that group. Don't ask for the pay just because you picked up the skill. Go get your hands dirty. Be a master at that skill. And hopefully a combination of that will unlock the progression you're looking for. I'd love to do more of these videos, particularly using your scenario. If you found this video useful, please hit the like and the subscribe button. But if you didn't find it useful, could you do me a favor and smash something in the comments to tell me what it is that you would have liked to have had answered, because that could give me some really good ideas to produce some new content and give me some new angles to talk to you about. If you have a scenario that wasn't yet discussed, could you please chuck that on to the comments? I'd love to use that as well, if you don't mind, to share that with everyone else. If you're facing a challenge which looks like a ceiling, chances are somebody else is as well. So please smash some of that into the comments. Otherwise, I'm gonna start smashing more of these videos out. Thank you so much for your time. See you guys later. Bye.